welcome everyone to another episode of Pirate Radio. I am your host who needs zero introduction. So here we go. We're going to tackle the most hot button of hot button issues right now, and that is my bad producing. No, not really, not yet. Anyway, hello, Merc. Welcome. Hello, everyone else. Jump in the chat. I might read one of your comments on air. So, anyway, it's been a hot button issue. The shooting that happened in Minnesota of the woman in the Honda 0807 Honda. Not really sure what year. It doesn't really matter. It's just really hard to understand. Getting murked in a Honda Pilot of like 2 generations ago. Bad day all the way around. If you're not aware, there was a shooting in Minnesota. I think it was Minneapolis. I'm not really sure. There's too much going on to actually get any detail other than an ICE agent who allegedly perceived a threat of being run over by this crazy person, what seemed to be a crazy person, crazy eyes, was shot and killed a woman. And now we have the ensuing craziness from everyone involved. I guess let's start with some basics, I guess. ICE agent Jonathan Ross shot suspect Renee Good 3 times, possibly 4. It's really hard to know, but if you haven't seen the video, or videos, I should say, there are many videos of different angles. Everybody's chosen a side. The fact of the matter is, Officer Ross shot Renee Good, striking her at least 1 time in the head, in which, boom, boom, out go the lights. I have a couple of questions before I dive into the main topic here. One is, there was a dog in the back seat, and I want to know where the dog is and if the dog is fine, because I really like dogs. And that dog appeared to be a black lab, or a lab of some sort, a very joyous and happy dog who looked like he wanted to get petted by the ICE agent. He certainly did not look like he wanted to attack him. Looked like a very nice and friendly dog, and I am concerned for his well-being, or her well-being. I'm assuming the gender of the dog, and we can't be assuming genders, especially not in the state of Minnesota. I also want to know the guy whose car got hit after Miss Good was struck, and then what would appear to me, seemingly her foot then jammed on the gas and rear-ended some poor bastard's white sedan, crushing it severely. Is the dog with the guy who owns the sedan? Again, I'm just assuming a guy or person who owns the sedan. Did they get the dog? Are they now taking care of it? And who makes this guy whole? Because if I'm the insurance company for Miss Good, I'm going to probably protest this because she was committing a violent act or a terroristic act or something. Basically, if I'm insurance, I'm going to be the cutthroat insurance bastard that they all are, and I don't want to pay anything in this claim. So there's that. I don't know. It's really bad when you're just, minding your own business, trying to catch a nap, maybe before or after work, or maybe you came home for lunch at work. I'm not really sure what time this happened. It was Tuesday with the sun out, so I'm not sure why Miss Good wasn't at work, like Mr. Ross was. But I don't know. You're just chilling at the house, and all of a sudden some crazy bitch runs in the back of your car with a hole in her head. So there's that. But those are really the only questions I have, because I don't really. It's a tragic situation anyway you slice it, and I want to start by saying this because everyone's chosen a side. This is the us versus them part of the episode here, where everyone's chosen this side, and I just would like to point out that we're producing, guys. I would just like to point out the fact that there are no good sides or right sides in this exchange. I think all parties involved acted retarded. I think that whether it's Miss Good or Officer Ross, both of them acted stupidly. It is very easy to make the case that Miss Good should have stopped her vehicle, gotten out, what have you. She'd probably be alive to this day had she done so. Valid point. Also, it is the question needs to be asked about Officer Ross of why, when in his walking around the vehicle filming it, why did he walk in front of a running vehicle with the driver behind the wheel to which she had just been driving it? Um, I had a very or a a mutual, a friend. I would say a pretty good friend, even though we've never hung out a whole lot. Just once in a while in Indiana. He posed the question about being pulled over by the police on a traffic stop, which is a valid question. But I think just the same valid question that I asked is, I've been pulled over many, many times. I've never had an officer walk in front of my vehicle. I tend to actually turn my vehicle off, depending on the temperature outside. If it's comfortable, your window down, vehicle off, make the officer feel, I'm trying to de-escalate a situation, which, yes, again, Miss Good did not try to de-escalate any situation. I mean, you can watch the video in which she said, "I'm not mad at you, bro," and she didn't, from what I can tell, she did not rev the engine trying to intentionally strike Officer Ross. But again, we're not going to litigate the whole video, and I'm not going to break it down. I don't want to show the video. I don't want to do any of that because I think both of these people were in the wrong here. I also think that the two officers that got out of the truck, who then initiated the confrontation here, who ratcheted up this situation when they approached Miss Good in her vehicle, assuming it is her actual vehicle as well, approached her in her vehicle and said, "Get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the car right now." Instead of, if you were going to, even if you wanted to ratchet up the situation with trying to get her out of her vehicle, prevent her from moving, do whatever, the idea is that you would take the truck, I believe it was a Nissan Titan, that the other two ICE officers were in, that they exited. Wouldn't you take that vehicle and at least try to kind of park it in front of Miss Good's vehicle, therefore at least trying to kind of pin her in and definitely affecting some sort of, "Hey, stop here, my vehicle is in the way," instead of this Officer Ross walking in front of a running vehicle. A lot of retardation was happening during this, okay? There's no no person in the right in this scenario. Everyone's drawing these lines based on these very, very, very vague kind of the macro instead of the micro, if you will, that, yes, I'm for immigration and customs enforcement. These guys are part of immigration and customs enforcement. They were trying to enforce immigration and customs on this neighborhood, looking for a suspect. They were rightfully there doing their job. So you have people then choosing to be on that side, and this guy can do no wrong. He's totally in the right. She hit him. She was trying to kill him, this, that, or the other. And then there's the other side, of the full-blown nutter side, that they don't believe, they believe that ICE are the so-called Gestapo or the Nazis or whatever. They're the SS, they're the enforcement wing of the crazy guy in the Oval Office named Donald Trump. And they're just these jackbooted thugs harassing innocent people. And all of you, when you take these broad strokes and the macro view of everything, you're all wrong. You're painting yourself into a corner. You're giving up your agency as a person. You now have taken any sort of logic or reason out of the equation, and you all look insane. And the vitriol and the cheering of a dead American woman is not where you want to be. This is the Charlie Kirk thing. I'm not equating this woman to Charlie Kirk, but all of us were horrified and should have been rightfully horrified in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination. All of the people who were cheering for it and doing all the things, they're doing exactly the same thing of just viewing everything through an us versus them lens, okay? And it makes you look stupid. it makes you look ignorant, and it makes you look angry. It makes you look homicidal. It makes you look like a goddamn psychopath. This is also, even if after you get out of these situations, these are hot button situations that no one should wade into instantly and choose a side or say who was right or who was wrong, because there's so much that then starts to happen. Other alternative views of video views, multiple different views from multiple different angles, and then allegedly now this ICE agent had internal injuries, what have you. There's so much that comes from this and goes into it and is now being talked about that I'm not sure what's going on in this situation. It's for courts to decide. It's a tragic situation all the way around. Even Donald Trump has said, hey, it's a tragic situation. I'm not sure, if who was right or wrong. I think he even said, I don't even view things through a right or wrong um, scenario. Um, Trump's the cooler head in this scenario. Let that sink in for a minute. What did Rogel say there? I think that was a valid little point. I've not looked. So from Mr. Anti-Ketchup Rogel Dorn, another friend of mine here, I've not looked at this as a us versus them. I've looked at this as libs are above the law to them. Again, that's still just an us versus them type thing. It's an us versus them thing because, I mean, that is the outgrowth of an us versus them thing. It's the outgrowth of if the other side are the Nazis, let's go back. If Nazis are inherently bad, that means it's okay to punch a Nazi. That means that the other side, if they're Nazis, it's okay to attack, punch, do whatever. And it also means that you're above them inherently because Nazis are bad. I'm not a Nazi. Therefore, I am, by proxy, I'm good. It's still an us versus them scenario. This is the baseline of it. It is viewing everything. And that's a good point, though, of looking at it, libs above the law to them. It really kind of distills it down. And when you look at an us versus them, it becomes dehumanizing as well. Because the us, we're in the right. The them, they're in the wrong. And they are barely even human in this world. This is how you get a people like the Jewish people post-Holocaust, post-World War II, who then end up with their own country in Israel, in the Middle East, and they have been through trials and tribulations. If we started just 1948 and go on, there's been trials and tribulations. They have been trying to, they've been trying to exist. They've been attacked numerous times. But now they find themselves in the position of being the power, the regional power, if you will, at least a regional strongman. So you see this us versus them mentality really starts to happen when you gain power is when it really goes wrong. And you're seeing this with the Gaza situation of public opinion anyway. We're not going to get into the dissection of Israel's war in Gaza, but the public opinion you have to at least acknowledge the public opinion has swayed, because one of the things a former Obama speechwriter who's a Jewish woman has been pointing this out. She's not getting it yet, but she's been talking into microphones and on televisions, in which she says the fact that they spent all of this time, by the Israel and Jewish folks have been spending this time talking about the Holocaust and how bad it was, because you had this big strong force destroying a weaker, smaller force, enslaving them, killing them, doing all of that. And now they have this problem in which Israel, when that is the view of it, big strong man versus weak non-strong man, That's how Gen Zers, anyone 35 and younger, are viewing what's happening in Gaza. Is the big strong Israel is now enslaving and killing the very weak, emaciated Palestinians. So they have this problem. It becomes an us versus them. You see this start to happen. If you're the super pro Zionist Israeli, uh, you see the Palestinians as less than. You see them as other. You see them as them. Us versus them. This flips the other way, but it's just you start the one with the power is able to exert said power, and now you all seem crazy. If you look at it from the other way of like Hamas versus or even the greater Palestinian. I don't know what the support among the Palestinians for Hamas is. I don't know how do you understand that. But if you just take Hamas, let's say the Hamas group. Hamas looks at us, Hamas, versus them, Israel. The state of Israel, Jews, I guess they hate them all, okay? These things don't work out. They're not going well. If we bring it back to just here, let's look at it like this. Do you have a side in Ukraine and Russia? I know a lot of you used to, especially when it first kicked off. It was, oh, fuck Russia, we hate Russia. Fair enough, but that doesn't mean you have to be on the side of the crazed Ukrainians. Okay, despite what your feelings might be, Ukraine is not like some breadbasket of democracy and freedom and what have you. It's not a very good place to, I don't know, rest your head and rest all of your morals and stake all of your claim to as a human being, as a moral person. It's another situation where you have a them, so then you have an us, and now you have to join the quote unquote us side, and you're all wrong. And you all seem ridiculous. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Russia, never have been, hated the Soviets, but I'm not a huge fan of, Ukraine either. I don't like either of them. You know why? Because they're not the United States of America. I love the United States of America. This is my country. I'm not going anywhere. This is the country I care about. I don't want to see people mass death and slaughter. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see anything that is escalatory beyond conventional means into maybe non-conventional nuclear weapons. Okay, Russia has them. Are they crazy enough to use them? I don't know. When you talk to the super pro-Ukrainian side, Putin is just some rabid madman who at any moment could use nuclear weapons, yet no one wants to force this thing to an end. So it's the irrationality of an us versus them kind of thing. You remember, this was, if you remember to the start of the Ukraine war, all of a sudden we were all the us. We were all in solidarity with the brave Ukrainians, even though we pushed this whole thing to start against the orcs, the Russians. He wants to reconstitute the Soviet Union, blah, 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 fucking blah. The best example of the us versus them nonsense is the COVID tyranny and the COVID nonsense. You had to choose a side during COVID. Were you a grandma killer? Or were you going to wear the mask and stay at home and be a good little American? Be a good little COVIDian? Is that what you were going to do? Because that was a direct us versus them. How'd that work out, guys? The bigger us versus them is Democrat versus Republican. When the Democrats have power, they're the worst things on earth, and the poor Republicans have to gain power, and then when the Republicans gain power, it switches again, and both parties are just screwing you anyway. You're choosing this whole us side based on nothing. The true us is the true you. You have a stake in your life. You have a stake in what happens in your life to a certain extent. You have a stake in your emotions, your actions, and things that you do. That's where you should be. This whole bigger us versus them thing is nonsensical. If you want to talk about like an existential crisis of a World War II or something like that, where it's us versus them and it's full on combat, that's a different story. You have an inherent reason to be like that. You're potentially facing destruction even if we get into the craziest scenarios of World War II, the United States was not really facing destruction, but, that's a different thing for a different time. But you see this playing out of, we are the us of the United States, they are the them of the Iranian regime. And it's like, well, why do we give a shit about the Iranian regime? Why do we give a shit about Iran at all? I mean, it's just so dehumanizing, this us versus them. And you see it shifting. That's the other part, is you see this us versus them thing shifting. So you can have like a principled stand of, you saw this with the Epstein files. So when the Democrats were in charge, the release of the Epstein files was a big thing. We have to get the Epstein files. The only reason Joe Biden won't release it is because he's protecting Bill Clinton or this, that, or the other, or maybe he's protecting himself and blah, blah, blah. And then Trump runs on it. And then Trump gets into office. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, those files don't really exist. I mean, you have Dovey Dan Bongino, old Dove Bongino, who apparently is back on the Twitters and is back doing his show, or at least is gearing up to be doing his show, which sucked anyway. He's going to suck again. But he completely ruined himself with the whole Epstein thing as deputy director of the FBI. Before he got in there, it was like, oh, I have on good authority that he was a spy for a Middle Eastern country, and I know people and people close to this and this, that, or the other. And then do you remember the hostage video that he and Kash Patel did on, I believe, Fox News? Were like, hey, we've seen the tapes. Guys, believe me, Epstein killed himself. And then it's like, bro, what? Seriously? Like, you just became regime instantly. All the shit you said, old Dove Bongino, and now you want to go after people on Twitter and block them constantly because they're calling you out for covering up for Epstein and a pedophile ring and international arms dealing and all of that. You just went full on like status, like deep state guy. Like, you could have resigned earlier. Like, that was a thing. You could have been like, hey man, not working out, not what I thought it was going to be, I got to resign. But it was an 8 to 5 gig and it was paying some bills or whatever. So like, you just went along with it. You just became the deep state, along with the former, hotel magnate Kash Patel, or maybe that's just a coincidence that his last name's Patel and they own a whole bunch of hotels. But you have Dan Bongino going after a guy like Dave Smith on Twitter because he called him out for covering up for pedophiles, and now he's freaking out and blowing his wig, and blowing out whatever hair he actually had left has gone away, and is just about to blow a fucking O-ring out of his face because you're rightfully being called out for covering up for Epstein and covering up the Epstein files. Like, no matter what's in the Epstein files, he talked about, like, reading millions of pages of documents and seeing the video, and it's like, well, can we see the video that you saw where he supposedly killed himself? And now you see these people twisting themselves in a pretzel to back up Dan Bongino and be like, no, man, Dan would lie. Dan's good. And if he says it ain't there, it ain't there. But you have these different talking points and different opinions or different facts, I guess, competing facts about there's tons of videos of underage things happening. There's tons of documents. There is no file. The file's on my desk. Oh, wait, no file. Oh, wait, there's files back. Oh, wait, we'll release them. And we'll release them. Trump says, no, we shouldn't release him. And then Thomas Massey's the worst guy on planet Earth because he gets his bill through that says you have to release him and you can't release him. You can't redact them. And then they say, well, we have to redact them because of this law. And then Massey goes, hey, I'm not a lawyer, but I think the new law supersedes the old law. So there's that. And it's like, we're just going to redact them anyway. We're just going to put up a bunch of pictures with a bunch of people with what appear to be overage females with Bill Clinton, with Donald Trump, with other people, and randomly Michael Jackson and I think Diana Ross. And that picture, they redacted 2 young kids, which turned out to be Diana Ross's kids. So that's weird. And you have people turning themselves into pretzels because they just view everything through an us versus them. And Dan Bongino, old Dove, Dove Bongino's on our side. He's part of us, and they're them. So I got to side with Dan, and you all look like utter fucking fools. This is what guys like Ben Shapiro do, because we have to view it through us as I'm the Republican, I'm the conservative, I do the thing. And so we have to sit here and we have to be on the side of the regime no matter what. Go to Iraq, blow up Iraq. Oh God, that went bad. Now we have to go to Iran. Gee, what could possibly happen with regime change in Iran? Could there be like a whole scattering of Shiite and Sunni and Kurd and Christian? Could it just be a quagmire of a civil war which millions of people are going to die in it as well? Do you think that might happen, Ben? But you have people lining up going, oh, well, Ben's one of us, and they're them, so I have to be on us. See how it gives up your agency, your independent thinking? You become a machine. You become some sort of like automaton or something. You just become a lemming for the next thing. And then the next thing comes along and you're just like, well, us is on this side, so I got to be on us side. Or you can hold two separate thoughts at one time that are your own thoughts that you can have. That's okay. You can still retain your agency. You don't have to say and champion and go out and cheer on the death of what appeared to be maybe a mentally ill person, someone which I'm not going to agree with politically. I may not agree with socially. Certainly, I think it's safe to say that I would not have agreed politically with Renee Good. Do I want her dead? No. Do I want the officer dead or run over or in prison? No. I want everyone to take this situation and look at it and go, that is a tragic situation. I wish no one had died. I'm not going to get involved in this and say, hey, I'm so glad she's dead because I'm on the side of ICE. That is a horrific place for you to be. That is sad. That's pathetic. I mean, just take a step back and look at yourself in the mirror if you can. If you're cheering on the death of some rando you didn't know, she could have been a very good person, just with differing political beliefs. I don't want everyone who has differing political beliefs than me dead. That's ridiculous. Some of them might want me dead, but I'm not going to descend to their level of depravity because they're on a different side than me. If they want me dead and try to enact that, that's going to be a different story. But if they despise me because I voted for Donald Trump, I really don't give a fuck. If you despise me because I like guns and I have a shitload of them and I want all gun laws repealed in accordance with our Constitution and our God-given right, protections in the Constitution and our God-given right to keep and bear arms, that's fine. You're on the wrong side, but that's fine. If you want to disagree with me because I think that voting should be relegated to a few select people within our American society, namely property owners and a couple other things, you can disagree with that. That's fine. You're wrong, but you can disagree with it. I don't care. I don't want you dead for disagreeing with me. I don't want you dead for a different color of your skin. I don't want you dead because you believe in a different God or gods or whatever. Maybe you don't even believe in God. That's fine. I don't want you dead. And I'm not wishing for your death. I'm wishing for your enlightenment. Now, all of this has the asterisk of the commies. And fuck the commies, because they're not people. So we don't really care what happens to the commies. They're pieces of shit who've chosen a horrible life and given up their human agency. So they don't count. But for the rest of us, we can live in a civilized society. Maybe we bring the temperature down just a hair, to where ICE agents aren't just shooting people in the fucking face because they perceive some sort of threat that they have put themselves into. Maybe you don't stand in front of a running vehicle, especially once it gets in gear or you see her in there messing with the gear shift. Maybe you get out of the way and get to the side. I don't know. I'm probably not going to use my body to try to stop a vehicle. I'm not going to stand there and go, halt. I know I'm not a cop. Even if I was a cop, especially if I was a cop, I'm not going to do the halt. Now, there are times when a cop can find himself or herself in front of a vehicle by no real fault of their own, and things have to go south. I understand that. That's not what happened in this scenario. So, not only are you just cheering on the death of some American woman with bad political beliefs, but now you're backing up an officer who looks ridiculous, if we're being honest. I'm not sure what protocol has you walking in front of a running vehicle. And there was plenty of places to go. You could have went back around the vehicle like you did. I'm not sure why you even went behind the vehicle. Now, I understand you were standing there, or you had an interaction with Renee's significant other, wife. I'm not sure what the exact label was. So the odds of her backing up over her own significant other are pretty low. But why you walked in front of the vehicle? I'm not on that guy's side, okay? I might be on that guy's side politically. See, that's the other part. When you choose this us-them thing and you don't know the us's that are involved, you don't know that Officer Ross is on your side politically. You don't know that. Most cops that I've ever interacted with on a personal level are not really fans of guns and civilian gun ownership and carrying. Some are. The vast majority that I've come across are not. They don't want anybody to have a gun because it makes their job easier. If no one has a gun and they have a gun, well, you can understand that as you do a traffic stop or any sort of like domestic, any sort of interaction with the public, if you knew for a fact that no one had a gun, that would put your mind at ease as a police officer. Fair enough. That's not in keeping with our God-given rights and the constitutional protections. But to assume that you believe the same thing, you don't know that Officer Ross didn't vote for Kamala. You don't know that. You don't know that he didn't vote for Biden. So now where are you at in the us-them scenario, dumbos? Are you still on the side of the ICE agent? You don't know. And you're ascribing all of these things in an us-them scenario. And again, you're just giving up any sort of intellectual agency that you have by just saying, I'm on the side of ICE. She was wrong. Glad she's dead. Yay, yay, yay. It's very inhuman of you. It's very sick. I'm finding myself more and more sickened. And you know what? Sickened's not the right word. Disappointed is the right word. I find myself more and more disappointed with folks that are allegedly on my same side politically and on my same team, my part of my us, if you will. You know, you make so many excuses. You make so many caveats for different things. I didn't want any sort of intervention into Venezuela. I don't know how that's going to go. I hope for the best. Like I said last week, I wish them well. I hope everyone has fun. But the thing is like, I'm not going to bend over backwards and say, oh, yay, I'm glad we did that. Oh, here we go. And just like with the Iraq War II, I wasn't a big fan at the time. I cheered on our troops when they finally got sent there. But I'm not going to make any apologies that was any sort of good idea or that any sort of that made sense even at the time. I know with hindsight, we all have a much more clear vision. But this whole idea that there was any rightness to that is nonsensical. So even though the people at the time were on the us side, they're still wrong. They were wrong then. They're more wrong now. That's how it works. So taking this whole us versus them thing, it's not that even most folks understand that they're doing it. You've chosen a side. You know, you're a Raiders fan and they're playing the Chiefs. I get it. You're for the Raiders. Not a huge fan of the Chiefs, division rivals, if you're not aware. Bad blood between the two. Usually fun games to watch, regardless of record, because they are not fans of each other as players, as franchises historically. I don't think they want the Chiefs dead. I'm pretty sure they don't. And if you're a Raiders fan, you can at least appreciate, the ability that a Patrick Mahomes has, or whatever other player you've played that's played against your beloved Raiders since, and vice versa. You can have tip of the cap, if you will, to a very, very good player on an opposing team. If you're just pure unadulterated hate, it's us versus them, you're an idiot, and it explains why you're a Raiders fan, because you're intellectually you're like just not all there. Your mouth is probably open 90% of the time. You're what we would call a mouth breather. You probably have a criminal record. You probably have back child support if you're a male. If you're a female, you probably have like 3 baby daddies. I mean, it's just bad stuff to be a Raiders fan, but it explains a whole lot. And that's what you become when you just view everything in an us versus them light, is you just become a retarded Raiders fan. I know that's kind of redundant. I could have just said Raiders fan. I get it. But that's what happens. Okay? Let's dive into some of these comments here. Okay. Rogo had to go back to work. Back to the mines. Let's see here. Agreed. The harassment was going on way before the shooting. And that's fine. You're a cop. You get harassed. When you're in enforcement, if you don't understand as an ICE agent that maybe what you're doing is unpopular, especially in a state like Minnesota that's like a sanctuary state, or if you're in a sanctuary city, you're going to get harassed. It's part of it. It's why you're wearing the mask. It's why you're not showing your face, so you don't get doxxed, because you have a family, or at least a place you want to go home to and not get harassed. I get it. That comes with the territory. If you can't deal with being harassed a little bit, or even a lot, then I don't know that you should be doing the job. There's a couple of comments about Real Bullets. Our friend of the show and former guest of the show, and soon to be guest again, we'll set that up, Mr. Arthur in California. Renee Good's partner screaming at ICE agents in the aftermath, quote, "Why do you have real bullets?" end quote, is evidence of their lack of understanding how volatile and serious of a situation they had inserted themselves in, and possible consequences tragic. I agree with that. It is tragic. I'm going to keep that comment up there. It is tragic. You can point to any number of things of them not understanding, them not realizing the gravitas, if you will, of the situation that they had inserted themselves into. It's kind of like a do-gooder type scenario where they think they're doing the greatest thing ever. Nothing's going to happen to me. It's also like the inherent flaw of a lot of middle class and above white women, and they don't have to be liberal, although more of a conservative Republican style woman understands real world consequences, but a liberal white woman really has no consequences for her actions, by and large. They're not allowed to be struck. Our whole society is constructed around not striking women and things of that nature. They're insulated from the way that they vote. They don't have to live amongst the nonsense that they vote for. They're typically not worried about communist ways that they may vote, or socialist ways that they vote. And there's just a lack of consequences in their daily life, and that goes to if your micro is lack of consequences, then your macro becomes lack of consequences, and it just becomes a very, very tragic situation for everyone involved. It's a tragic situation for the officer. I don't think he wanted to kill anybody. He acted stupidly, but I don't think he really wanted. I don't think he woke up that day wanting to kill someone. If he did, well, Jesus Christ. Then if he did wake up that day or the days before just itching to pull the gun and put a cap in that ass, then that's the side you guys have chosen, because you're just viewing everything through an us versus them. You've chosen the side of a complete psychopath with a badge. And that's not the side I want to be on. I don't want to be on any side like that. And if I someone wants to ostracize me because I'm not just going to line up on someone else's side because to them it's a clear cut us versus them. Go fuck yourself. Ostracize me. I don't want to be a part of your shithole little thing anyway. I really don't care. Um, I have to live with me. It's tough enough already. I don't need some more bullshit that is on my fucking conscience just because I have to choose some fucking political side because I voted a certain way or I'm perceived to be a certain way. That's anti-American. And I'm not going to do that, and I don't expect any of you to do that. Anyone who disagrees with me, that's great. I'm fine with that. I actually enjoy that. I enjoy a discourse. I enjoy a debate, an argument, or whatever you want to call it, a discussion. These people that have like live in an echo chamber where they're just with people that are like-minded, 100% like-minded and agree with. I'm not really for that. I will argue any point that I have or any position I have. Um, I try to play it down the line and keep it even of what I try to keep my hypocrisy to a minimum. Sometimes it's hard, but I try to do that. And, you know, some of the hypocritical things I can hold views in my head. I talked about it last week with Venezuela. I really don't have a big problem with snatching the leader and keeping the government in place there in Venezuela. I believe that the Venezuelan people are united as a people, a culture, a country. Whereas when you juxtapose that to like the current situation in Iran, um, I guess the uprising seems to be legitimate. It doesn't seem to be manufactured. It seems to be more grassroots than astroturfed, mainly because there's not a whole lot of information coming out of it, which for me is like a litmus test that it's probably real and not being manufactured because there's no narrative coming right from it. But if you juxtapose Venezuela to Iran, the region in Iran has a very, very dubious past when governments are overthrown, when chaos comes. And I don't think no real country in the Middle East outside of an Israel has a like national identity, a people's identity, a unified thought behind a country or a state. Israel's very unique in that way. The rest of them are like basically conglomerations of tribes. I hope I used that word conglomeration, or collectives of tribes held under thumb by a strong man generally, or a strong regime. The Saddam Hussein situation was a very obvious thing that didn't take a rocket scientist to understand. When you got rid of the minority leader who kept things under thumb, what would happen. But hey, there's that. So, anyway, I hope I've been somewhat clear on what us versus them means, and hopefully everyone can understand that it's hard to do. I'll be the first to admit. It's very hard to remove yourself from an us versus them mentality. Raiders or Chiefs. It's very hard to do because, especially now with social media and this ICE situation, is really hard to do because there was so much video when it was so in your face. And it's very hard to not notice it, and it's very hard to stay out of the fray, especially when you see like ridiculous statements being made on another side of like he had no right to shoot her. That's not accurate. I saw one interaction where someone was saying that based on the protocols of I don't remember if it was ICE or just police officers in general or federal officers. They even did like an AI generation from Google. They just asked Google, and Google AI came back and said this whole thing. And he was like, "See, they're not allowed to do that unless the vehicle is like coming at them at a high speed or whatever, or this, that." And it was like, as you just read one sentence later, it said something to the effect of a perceived threat from a running vehicle. They have the ability to just the no one is really, or very few, are actually thinking, rational thoughts. It's just Chiefs versus Raiders, and you're just jumping on your sides and saying, F the Raiders or F the Chiefs or whatever, and you're just choosing the side, and you all look foolish. You all look like bloodthirsty maniacs when you're cheering on the death of some woman who got shot in the face. It just, again, take a step back sometimes and understand that the position you're taking, you can back the ICE officer and officers in their mission. That doesn't mean you have to champion shooting a woman in the face. That's just like, you can be on the side of, say, the Iranian people, whatever that exactly means. That doesn't mean we need to bomb their regime into oblivion and plunge the country into a civil war between warring factions. Because a lot of innocent people are going to die. And also, do you care about people or not? There's that. Because if you care about, like, innocent people, then maybe you take a step back and think about this whole thing of, what did Renee Good really do? There's that. Oh, Merc. To be fair, I don't think most people are being serious. That's fine. There's a lot of shit posting that happens on the interwebs. But do you have that same thought for the Charlie Kirk people who were laughing about his death? If you can show that same grace to those people, good on you. I don't know that standard holds up both ways. And it may not, and you may not have meant it that way, Mark. But that is something to consider. This is the true, nonpartisan, if you will, independent way to view things, is view them by a case-by-case basis. You can view things through different lenses. It's okay. You can take, like, a Trayvon Martin situation is another situation similar to this, although it doesn't involve any authorities. If you remember, Trayvon Martin ended up dead because of, I forget the guy's name, Zimmerman, George Zimmerman maybe, follows this kid. It's rainy. He thinks the kid's suspicious. He's on the phone with 911. At some point, they get into a confrontation. Trayvon Martin apparently ends up on top of Zimmerman, punching him in the face. A little ground and pound action in which Zimmerman pulls a pistol, shoots Trayvon Martin, and kills him. That's a tragic situation. I don't have to pick a side in that. That's for the courts to decide that one. That is a whole lot of dumbassery on display. If you're Zimmerman, I'm not sure why you're confronting this young man. I don't know all of the circumstances that led up to the confrontation. There's no video of it, at least that I'm aware of. I don't know why you're confronting him. You're already following him. I don't know why you're exiting your vehicle to find this. I think he thought he was a man, like a full-grown man. Turns out to be like a 16-year-old kid, if I remember right. And all of this dumbassery is followed up by the ultimate in dumbassery of Barack Obama, who could have tamped it down by saying it's a tragic situation in which, some foolishness was exerted or shown, and the courts will sort it out, and I'm sure they'll come to the right agreement. Instead, he said, well, if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon, which just sent everybody over the fucking edge. So much dumbassery in that situation. And to Trayvon's side, why are you attacking this grown man and beating the shit out of him. You don't know if he has a gun. First of all, you don't know if he can fight. I mean, he was like a fat Mexican dude, so I mean, whatever. Odds are. Why are you beating the shit out of some guy? Yeah, he's following you, and you're going to the store. Keep going to the store. What are you doing? Now, I hold Zimmerman to a much higher standard socially as the actual adult than I do Trayvon. But again, it's both of them acted stupidly. And stupid things happen. Zimmerman, I know Zimmerman was vindicated, but he went through a shitty process. There were no winners in that scenario. Trayvon's dead, and Zimmerman's broke, and he, a pariah forever in a lot of eyes. And, on top of that, at the human level, he has to live with the fact that he killed a 16-year-old kid. Was he in fear for his life? I'm sure he fucking was. Getting the shit beat out of him. But it's a situation you put yourself into that went south. I'm sure if Zimmerman had known where that situation was going to go, he would not have put himself in that situation. But that situation, much like the ICE shooting situation, I would like to think that that officer, had he known that she was going to put the car in drive and drive towards him, whether the wheel was turned or not, he would not have put himself in the front of that vehicle. I will give him the benefit of the doubt in that scenario. But he did, and she did. Just like with Zimmerman and Martin. Did he think that kid was going to jump on him, get the better of him, start beating the shit out of him? I don't think he did. Otherwise, I don't believe he would have got out of the vehicle and went and looked for Trayvon. But he did. That did happen. This is the same thing that everyone needs to understand when you start regime changing fucking countries. Can it go well? Yes. Can it go fucking south fucking quick? Yes. So you don't have to pick a side because this side is supposedly your side because you voted for a guy thrice times and now he's in the White House again and you're backing him on a lot of things. You don't have to back up every goddamn thing that he's doing. You can say, hey, I'm all for ICE getting, violent illegal criminals or whatever, illegal immigrants out of the country. You don't have to back it up every time that they shoot some woman in the face under some very murky circumstances, let's say. And you don't have to back them up when they shoot a 21-year-old kid with a rubber bullet in the fucking eye, which I believe that's what happened here recently. You don't have to back that shit up. Because you don't have to view everything through an us versus them. You can view it as a this situation, this scenario, this situation, that scenario. All of these things can be viewed through separate lenses, through an independent thinking lens. I would like to say also that when some hot button shit like this happens and it's all over social media, you don't have to comment. You don't. And some of you really need to understand that and not comment on every damn thing that happens. Yes, I saw it and was like, fuck that bitch. Oh man, I can't believe she did that. That's not going to end well. And it's like, well, let's take a beat here. Arthur in California, woke insanity on the identity charade. That is a profound comment that I'm not quite sure what you mean, but the woke insanity on the identity charade. It is kind of that woke thing. When you see, I don't know, there's the us versus them that you can it applies to so many things. It applies to the trans movement. You can hold the belief that if a grown adult of their own volition wants to trans themselves, 18 years or older, it's a free country. You can do what you want. You got the money. It is what it is. But that gets conflated with the child side of it, and now it's an us versus them, and no one's allowed to go against the us um, without becoming a them. And now it all descends into just utter chaos and insanity and nuttery. These things become the same. It's not as harmful to kids necessarily, but this whole you know that's another point that I hadn't really thought of is like you can shit post on the interwebs and have fun and do the shit posting, um, but maybe and some people have made it like a career out of shit posting, or at least a social media career presence out of shit posting, and that's fine. But maybe think about it, you know, in 10 or 20 years, if my child were to see this, would I be proud of this? Because the internet's kind of forever. This ain't really going anywhere unless we have a real great reset, which sometimes I wish for, if I'm being honest. Um, I don't know. I'm running out of shit to say. One of the things I've been posting a lot lately, I seem to post it, I don't know, weekly. I need to probably keep that up. And that is, there's not always a right side in a situation. There's not a correct side. There's not a side you should take in a lot of situations. No opinion is sometimes the best opinion. It's like my thoughts in Iran with their protests are okay, the regime has weapons. The current ruling government has weapons. Let's just arm the protesters with a bunch of weapons that we can bring in from Syria or something and just hope they all have fun. Make it a fair fight, right? See who wins. It's like a sanctioning body. It's like a boxing match. Both these guys have their fight cards. They've been sanctioned by the governing body of the athletic commission of some state. They made weight. Hope they have fun. Let's cheer them on. Maybe even wager on it. See what happens. I don't know. Clarification from Arthur. It turned from a tragic event into a stand in for racial grievances in the media. Yes, it did. The it is funny because we used to always blame the corporate media for fanning the flames of this shit. The Trayvon Martin thing was that. I think that's what Arthur's talking about or responding to is the Trayvon Martin stuff. Um, it definitely did that. Obama didn't help that, but you start to see that happening on corporate media has no more power. They're dead. They're gone. They're over. I guess they're still on. No one's watching, which is weird. But you're starting to see that same thing, which tells you of how right I am about an us versus them mentality because it plays well. It's now soaked up into social media, and you don't have to have like some centralized governing body or centralized entity that does it. We do it on our own. You do the same thing, and it's an us versus them on the people you follow a lot of times on social media, and same with who follow you. I mean, how many of you actually follow people you don't agree with? I follow a lot of people I don't. You know what? I follow a lot of people um, that I ended up in some sort of uh, discussion, debate, responses back and forth on a subject topic we disagreed with, and I ended up following some of them, and a lot of them followed me back. It was a good back and forth. They weren't insane. We just disagreed, but they came from coherent, logical points and coherent and logical wisdom and life experiences, and I can respect the shit out of that. And so I followed those people, and like I said, some of those people followed me back. And to this day, I'll see some of them like my stuff. I'll see their stuff like some of their stuff, and you start to find that your minds are quite a bit alike. It's just the margins that are a little bit different. The page is quite a bit the same. You know, um, you start to find things that you have in common. There's just you can disagree. Um, so when you only follow people, what my overall point was going to be, when you only follow people that you like or that you are not that you like, but you have likes with, you're like-minded of, your politics are the same or something like that, then you're just getting positive reinforcement, and you're creating your own us versus them kind of echo chamber unknowingly. Now, we all, vast majority of people we follow are going to be people that we're either actual friends with, people we agree with, people we're like-minded with, but you need to have people in your social media uh, profiles that you don't agree with, or that you don't see 100% eye to eye with, or maybe you're 50-50 on, but they're not crazy. They just have a different view of things. And maybe they grew up in a different place, so that's why they have the different view. Different races, different places, different ethnicities, things of that nature. It's also why you should take in some of the shit media that's out there, like Bari Weiss, and just see what they're saying. And, read people you don't necessarily agree with. It gives you a different perspective. It keeps you from 100% echo chamber. Don't go necessarily read the New York Times. Don't go full communist on us here, but you can read different things, listen to different podcasts, different things out there. You know, I listen to Michael Malice a lot. He makes some good points, but the whole anarchism thing is just nonsense. It defies human nature. I've talked about it before in a previous episode that the anarchists, and especially like the anarcho-capitalists, you're just defying human nature. It doesn't work. You can talk about things in a vacuum and how they should work, and that's fine, but you never factor in the human nature part of it. And how can you talk about humans without factoring in the human nature of it? Apparently, I called out Arthur there. He's a New York Times reader. The Times isn't horrible. You can read it. And Merck, not a Michael Malice fan. Great. If Michael Malice, okay, grifter vibes from Michael Malice. If Michael Malice was a grifter, I think he would be more Ben Shapiro-y than he would be anarchist. Um, we've descended into the whiskey phase of this podcast, so anything from here cannot be held against me. A little proper 12, if anyone's wondering. I don't know how you can see Michael Malice as a grifter. He's an author, but I don't know. Maybe that's worse. Michael Malice wrote one of the best books on communism that I've ever read, called The White Pill. Regardless of your feelings of Michael Malice, I think he self-published it. It's a very well put together book, just from the presentation of it to the content. The White Pill is a great book. I don't know. See, I'm friends with Merck, and he hates Michael Malice. So, I have the contrarians in my life as well. So there you go. See, now Merck and I have hung out, shot guns and shit, and ate food together and all that. He doesn't like ham, so it's just more ham for me. That's all I'm saying. But anywho, I really hope that you guys can understand kind of what I'm saying here. I hope it makes sense. I hope that the dozens of you that hear this will start to at least try to see things from a different point of view, and not get so caught up in the us versus them kind of mentality stuff. It makes for a little bit better life for you, if I'm being honest. I've been doing this for, I don't know, 2 to 3 years or something. I don't know. Be independent. Think independently. Get information from differing sources. Get your wisdom from older folks who have wisdom. Try to seek wisdom. That's a big one. With wisdom, you're less likely to be fooled. You're harder to fool when you're a wise person and when you understand wisdom. And it's one of those things that comes with living life, and it's hard to acquire. But once acquired, you're more powerful with it. And that's what I think understanding an us versus them mentality and positions really does. It makes you wiser. It makes you able to see the world in a different light. It makes you able to see all sides. One of the things I've had a very uncanny ability to do for the majority of my life is to try to understand the other side. Um, in any scenario, what was the other person or persons thinking? Try to understand where they're coming from. This helps greatly in all scenarios, especially in like maybe a kind of racial scenario, or it helps a lot in, maybe that's why I've been so good at sales, is I'm trying to understand. I can picture things from the purchaser's point of view. We have this saying that's ubiquitous, that's make it make sense. If you can make something make sense, then you're able to do your sales job effectively. It's also how you convince people of different things, is you just make it make sense. And what does that mean? Because what makes sense to me may not make sense to you. So I need to understand kind of where you're coming from to make it make sense to you. It's also what makes a topic like a us versus them very hard to do over a internet connection without any real feedback in talking to a specific person. So I'm talking in just like platitudes, basically. I'm talking in generalizations, not able to understand a certain question you might have, or where you might be coming from, or that you're even really comprehending, the beginning of a statement or something like that. And I don't mean that like as a pejorative or something, but making things make sense. I'm going to toot my own horn, and I'm not the only one that can do it. I'm around guys all the time that can do it. Making things make sense is a talent. Once you get an idea of it and you can perfect it, it changes your whole life. Because now you can talk to random people who you're not trying to sell things to. It makes you listen. It forces you to listen. Because how can I sell a product to someone that I would never buy? That's a talent. And I have to understand what their situation, their scenario, their life, their current situation, what all of those things. I would never buy a 2-wheel drive truck. I shouldn't say never. I would buy a specific 2-wheel drive truck as kind of a hot roddy truck, but it wouldn't be in every, like, if I just go buy a truck tomorrow, I'm buying a 4-wheel drive truck. There are plenty of people who buy 2-wheel drive trucks for whatever reason. So, when I was in the car sales business, it would be foolish of me to assume that every single person interested in a truck only wanted a 4-wheel drive truck. I need to understand their situation. I need to make it make sense for them, not for me. And that is a talent, like I said, that will help you throughout your entire life. Because now, if someone is saying, if we take the ice situation, shooting situation, if they're saying, and this is assuming they're intellectually honest, and they're not just some crazed nutter on the interwebs. But if someone says, I just really don't like how that went down. I really don't like that woman's dead. I really feel for her and her family. Your reaction to that should not be, well, the bitch had it coming. That's not your reaction. Your reaction should be, oh, so you have remorse for the woman and her family, which is a human emotion, a natural human emotion. You should say, you could follow up with something like, man, I just wish she hadn't been there, or I wish she had just put the car in park and, put her hands out the window or something like that, where would this situation have gone at that point? And the other person probably going to respond, yeah, I mean, that would have been much better than blah, blah, blah. And it's like, now we're having a conversation, and now we're going to like get somewhere in this conversation. And I, by the end of that conversation, will understand where that person is coming from. Is it a genuine human emotion? Are they trying to figure out me, or is this just some sort of bullshit? My argument style, my discussion style, especially with someone I know has a belief system different than mine, will just be to ask questions. And they're not necessarily questions I know the exact answer to, but they're questions I'm going to know one of two answers, which then is going to put me down another line of questioning. And we're going to get somewhere, or usually what happens is they get fucking frustrated and like, I just don't want to talk. The best response I ever got doing this was some liberal chick at a bar, friend of a friend, not like that. And I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I just was doing the same thing that I've done for years. Like, okay, so this, okay, so that, and just ask the questions. And it so frustrated her. By the end of it, her final response was, well, I have a degree. Okay, great. I don't. And yet I won. So there's that. I guess I should say, this is like the first time ever that I already have the episode for next week in my head. And it's based on, hopefully, you assholes, I mean that nicely, hopefully all you beautiful people follow me on my YouTube channel. I posted a YouTube reel 5 days ago. What did I name it exactly? Let's see. I named it Serial Numbers Are a Joke. And as of right now, it has 145,000 views, 3,400 likes, and 404 comments. So, go watch that reel. Get up to speed, because that's what it's going to be about. Because, my God, are the comments out of bounds. It's unbelievable to me. So next week's episode is going to be about swapping slides on a Glock. It's going to be about ballistics. It's going to be about any number of things. Forensic ballistics, I think, is what the FBI's pseudoscience is called. It's going to be all about bullet ballistics. It's going to be all about the myths and misnomers surrounding bullet ballistics. I'm excited about it. I was excited about this episode, but I'm really excited about next week's. The last time I did a podcast about ballistics, in which I talked about Ian Carroll and how retarded he is, and trying to figure out the ballistics of a bullet when it hits soft tissue, I think is actually like my most watched, at least on YouTube. It's my most watched podcast. Most viewed. So anyway, I'm excited about that. So everybody set your phones, your alarms, your alerts, whatever, to next week. We're going to talk about guns. We're going to talk about ballistics. We're going to talk about all the cool shit. So till then, everybody, I really appreciate the comments. I appreciate everybody hanging out. I appreciate all the support. You guys are great. From Mercury, Arthur in California, Romeo, Jake, Rogel, those who didn't comment, you're all well loved as well. They're just the comments that I see. B, I know B would be here if he could, but he probably had some prior engagement, and that's awesome, man. He hangs out with the family a lot. He's great people. All of you guys are great people that hang out in here. Yeah, I think Arthur's the only one I've never met actually in person. We're going to change that at some point. But anyway, all of you guys are great, and I really appreciate it. But until next time, everybody have a great night. Have a better weekend. If you're in my area of operation or north, try to stay warm. But till next time, guys, stay safe, stay warm, and don't be an us versus them. Peace.